All right, looks like we left off. We're on chapter 10 to employers at the bottom of page 144. I have bookmarked the last paragraph on 144. And the interesting thing that has struck me is I'm just kind of going through the pages since the beginning of this chapter where it started on 136. This has been put together very succinct. There are so many clear-cut directions in here of how an employer may handle an alcoholic that works for him. And this, originally when this book was sent out, it was for the employer to be able to read this, right? And then follow those directions to work with an employee. But today, there are so many of us that are working with a new guy that we can actually do the same thing as when we're mentoring a new guy. We can kind of do a bit of mentoring with the employer if it's necessary, if that opportunity arises, and not only give this to them and have them read this chapter, but also to explain it to them as go through it with them the exact same way that we would with a newcomer. And the thing that struck me, I think, is looking back over this is many of the instructions that we see that are given here for an employer, they're the exact same instructions in many regards that they've given to us in the prior chapters as to if you're mentoring a new guy, these are the same things that you do when you're looking at a new prospect. As they say, what's the first thing you do? You're going to want to learn all you can about him. Most importantly, want to find out if he wants to quit or not. That's the same thing it said here with, as you as an employer, you're going to want to probe this guy, it says, to find out if he really wants to quit. You're going to have to probe these questions. And it's the same thing that's also given in chapter 8 to wives, but to anybody who's tied by blood or affection to the alcoholic. Same instructions are given there, finding out if he really wants to quit. And it says if he doesn't, cheerfully see him through his next spree is what it says. Get this guy to the bottom. But all these directions are exactly the same, and I just find that remarkable, and also very simple. If you really start studying this, it's all really the exact same thing. So on 144, they talk about as you get, I guess I'll back up to 142. And if you look at the last paragraph on 142, it's talking about basically after you got done probing your employee, and it says in the middle of the page, be satisfied he's not deceiving you. Make sure that it says in a first paragraph at the end of it says, will he take every necessary step and submit to anything to get well, to stop drinking forever? That's the question we're looking for. Is he willing to go to any lengths to stop drinking forever? Is that where your guy's at? And it goes on to say, if he's not, if he temporizes, it says, and thinks he can still control it, even just drinking beer, then he should be discharged after his next bender. Either you're dealing with a man who can and will, we've talked about this a lot, these cannots and will nots. He either can and will get well, or you're not dealing with a guy like that. But it goes on in the last paragraph. So now we're dealing with, it says, after you're satisfied your man wants to recover and that he's willing to go to any length to do so, you may suggest a definite course of action. So starting at the bottom of page 142, we're qualifying that we have a candidate or an employee that does want to get well and he is willing to do anything. And you've probed him and you've come to your determination that he's not lying. This is what he wants to do. So what's the first thing it tells us to do on the top of page 43 in this definite course of action? First thing is, it says at the top of 143 that he may end up needing treatment, right? He may end up needing detox. And it says that whatever the method of this detox or treatment center, its object, this is the object. The objective is to thoroughly clear his mind and body of the effects of alcohol. In other words, get him to a place where he can be separated from that in which he is addicted to for a period of time, so that it goes on to say that he can think straight, so that he can think straight and no longer craves liquor. And we've read that before. A man's mind needs to be cleared before he is going to be able to comprehend and or accept what we have to offer. So you get him through treatment. And it says also, if your man accepts your offer, send him to treatment, you should point out that this physical treatment, that's what the treatment center is for, physical treatment, it's but a small part of the picture. That's not the end all. It's not you go to treatment, you come out and you're well. That's just a small part. They knew that back then, right? Though you're providing with the best medical attention, he should understand that he must undergo a change of heart. We're talking about the spiritual experience, right? A change of heart. To get over drinking will must, a transformation of thought and transformation of attitude. And I like going back to thinking about what Roland Hazard had learned from Dr. Jung when he talked about what the spiritual experience looked like, which was ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of these men's lives, were suddenly cast aside, and a new set of conceptions and motives dominated them. New ideas, emotions, and attitudes, a transformation of thought and attitude. That's what's going to be required for him to get over drinking. And they're saying you as an employer should teach them that. My God, I wish there were enough people in AA that knew that could even say that to newcomers. But they're giving this information as an employer. You should know this and be able to give this to your employee. We all had to place recovery above anything, for without recovery, we would have lost both home and business. And we get over to 144, and they remind us that we do not have the last word on the subject concerning alcoholism. All that we have is something that has worked for us, right? And they mention that because at the top of the page, they're asking, like, for the employer, you might not buy into this whole thing about spiritual experience. You might not like our methods. But then it asks the question, are you more interested in methods, or are you more interested in results? Because our results are, we have more than 100 men and women who wrote this book, and every single one of us recovered. That's the results we got. So if you're interested in that, that's what we're having to offer. Maybe not focus on the method. Maybe you want to focus more on the results. It says whether your employee likes it or not, what he's going to learn from you is the grim truth about alcoholism. So that is indicating that the employer would be teaching the employee a little bit about alcoholism, the condition of the mind and the body, which ends up being a hopeless condition, seemingly hopeless anyways. But they're asking the employer to explain that. Where's he going to learn that? That's something that he would hopefully be able to learn from us. But it goes on to say, then the next thing, give him this book and give it to him while he's acutely depressed. We've read this before too. Get the guy while he's down, because he may have a better realization of his condition and may come to him when he's depressed. And then the man must decide for himself whether he wants to do this deal or not. And then we get down to the last paragraph where we left off. And the line right before that last paragraph, I really like, and I would highly recommend to underline and highlight this. They're saying that we are sure that a great deal, would underline great deal, we are sure a great deal can be accomplished by the use of this book alone. Even without a mentor, this book alone is all that these guys needed, is in the first portion of this book for them to recover. So much can be done with this book alone. And now we're at that last paragraph in 44, where it says, on your employee's return. So he's coming back from treatment, right? Comes back, have a talk with him. Ask him if he thinks he has the answer. If he feels free to discuss his problems with you, if he knows you understand and will not be upset by anything he wishes to say, he will probably be off to a fast start. In this connection, you can remain undisturbed if the man proceeds to tell you shocking things. I've already been warned early in this chapter that he may tell you anything, right? Because what are we trying to practice in this way of life? Rigorous honesty, the full measure. So he may tell you anything, so be prepared. He may, for example, reveal that he has padded his expense account, or that he has planned to take your best customers away from you. In fact, he may say almost anything if he has accepted our solution, which, as you know, demands rigorous honesty. I did not see that before I just said that, but that's exactly what they're talking about. Underline, if he has accepted our solution, and as you know, it demands rigorous honesty. He's going to tell you the truth if he's accepted what's in this book. Can you charge this off as you would a bad account and start fresh with him? It's a question for the employer. If he owes you money, you may wish to make terms, right? Equal restitution. If he speaks of his home situation, you can undoubtedly make helpful suggestions. Can he talk frankly with you so long as he does not bear business tales or criticize his associates? With this kind of employee, such an attitude will command undying loyalty. Underline, The greatest enemies of us alcoholics are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. Almost everything we found in step 4. Number 1, what's the number 1 offender? Resentment. These are the greatest enemies of alcoholics. Wherever men are gathered together in business, there will be rivalries and, arising out of these, a certain amount of office politics. Sometimes we alcoholics have an idea that people are trying to pull us down. Often this is not so at all, but sometimes our drinking will be used politically. One instance comes to mind in which a malicious individual was always making friendly little jokes about an alcoholic's drinking exploits. In this way, he was slyly carrying tales. In another case, an alcoholic was sent to a hospital for treatment. Only a few knew of it at first, but within a short time, it was billboarded throughout the entire company. Naturally, underline this sort of thing decreased the man's chance of recovery. The employer can many times protect the victim from this kind of talk. The employer cannot play favorites, but he can't always defend a man from needless provocation and unfair criticism. As a class, alcoholics are energetic people. They work hard and they play hard. Your man should be on his mettle to make good. Being somewhat weakened and faced with physical and mental readjustment to a life which knows no alcohol, he may overdo. We read about this as well. You may have to curb his desire to work 16 hours a day. You may need to encourage him to play once in a while. He may wish to do a lot for other alcoholics, and something of the sort may come up during business hours. A reasonable amount of latitude will be helpful. Underline, this work is necessary. That sounds like a must. Is necessary to maintain the sobriety. So in that paragraph, if you remember, when we were reading a couple of chapters back, it says that an alcoholic will generally take one of 2 courses of action as soon as he is recovering or has recovered. One is to go headlong into work and business and try to get his financial affairs back in order, making up for God knows how much loss, right? That's what they're talking about here, 16 hours a day. Or the second course they generally see a guy take is, what do they call it? Indulging in spiritual intoxication, talking about nothing else day and night, and that's what he's doing. They're talking about the exact same thing here. But it says to understand that type of work, it is necessary to maintain sobriety, but they're basically talking about, talk to him about finding a balance between play, work, and working with others. After your man has gone along without drinking for a few months, okay, he's been sober a few months, you may be able to make use of his services with other employees who are giving you the alcoholic runaround, provided, of course, they are willing to have a third party in the picture. So I'd like to look at this. It said after he has gone along without drinking for a few months. Now they're already talking about that this guy, by this time, well, we know how long does it take to recover? I think we found that around page 567 near the bottom, so that can happen in a few months. So in other words, you may be able to make use of this guy after he has recovered, is what they're saying, which should happen within a few months. It says an alcoholic who has recovered, that's what we're talking about, in a few months, but holds a relatively unimportant job, can talk to a man with a better position. Being on a radically different basis of life, he will never take advantage of the situation. Your man may be trusted. Long experience with alcoholic excuses naturally arouses suspicion. When his wife next calls saying he is sick, you might jump to the conclusion he is drunk. If he is, and is still trying to recover, he will tell you about it, even if it means the loss of his job. For, underline, he knows he must be honest if he would live at all. If he's honest with you, your guy's probably sincere, because he knows he must be honest. Do we get all that? Remember when we read that on page 58, first paragraph in chapter 5, it talked about honesty 3 different times. It mentioned honesty, rigorous honesty, right? Honesty being the one essential thing that we must have. They're saying even this new guy, if he ends up failing, hopefully he has learned from his mentor that honesty is essential. Without it, you're not going to get anywhere. He will appreciate knowing you're not bothering your head about him, that you're not suspicious, nor are you trying to run his life, so he will be shielded from temptation to drink. Same thing we read about to wives. If he is conscientiously following the program of recovery, he can go anywhere your business may call him. I think that goes back to page 151 when we talked about temptation. You should be able to go anywhere. Oh, actually, that's ahead of us, so we're not there yet. We'll get into that here shortly. This idea that once you're recovered, you can go anywhere your business may call him. In case he does stumble even once, you will have to decide whether to let him go. So here's our warning. If this happens, if you are sure he doesn't mean business, there is no doubt you should discharge him. If, on the contrary, you are sure he is doing his utmost, you may wish to give him another chance. But you should feel under no obligation to keep him on, for your obligation has been well discharged already. There's another thing you might wish to do. If your organization is a large one, your junior executives might be provided with this book. You might let them know you have no quarrel with the alcoholics of your organization. These juniors are often in a difficult position. Men under them are frequently their friends. So for one reason or another, they cover these men, hoping matters will just take a turn for the better. They often jeopardize their own positions by trying to help serious drinkers who should have been fired long ago or else given the opportunity to get well. After reading this book, a junior executive can go to such a man and say approximately this: look here, Ed, do you want to stop drinking or not? Sounds like the guy read the book, because that's the first thing you want to know, right? Do you want to stop drinking or not? You put me on the spot every time you get drunk. It isn't fair to me or the firm. I have been learning something about alcoholism. If you're an alcoholic, you're a mighty sick man, and you act like one. The firm wants to help you get over it, and if you're interested, there is a way out. If you take it, your past will be forgotten, and the fact that you went away for treatment will not be mentioned. But if you cannot, or if you will not stop drinking, I think you ought to resign. Your junior executive may not agree with the contents of this book, and he need not, and often should not, show it to his alcoholic prospect. But at least he will understand the problem and will no longer be misled by ordinary promises. He will be able to take a position with such a man which is eminently fair and square. He will have no further reason for covering up an alcoholic employee. It boils right down to this: no man should be fired just because he's an alcoholic. If he wants to stop, he should be afforded a real chance. If he cannot or does not want to stop, he should be discharged. The exceptions are few. I think that every bit of that should be underlined and highlighted. That really summarizes everything we read. We think this method of approach will accomplish several things. It will permit the rehabilitation of good men. At the same time, you will feel no reluctance to rid yourself of those who cannot or will not stop. Alcoholism may be causing your organization considerable damage in this waste of time, men, and reputation. We hope our suggestions will help you plug up this sometimes serious leak. We think we are sensible when we urge that you stop this waste and give your worthwhile men a chance. The other day, an approach was made to the vice president of a large industrial concern. He remarked, "I'm mighty glad you fellows got over your drinking, but the policy of this company is not to interfere with the habits of the employees. If a man drinks so much that his job suffers, we fire him. I don't see how you can be of any help for us. As you see, we don't have any alcoholic problem." The same company spends millions for research every year. Their cost of production is figured to a fine decimal point. They have recreational facilities. There is company insurance. There's a real interest, both humanitarian and business, in the well-being of the employees. But alcoholism, well, they just don't believe they have it. Perhaps this is a typical attitude. We who have collectively seen a great deal of business life, at least from the alcoholic angle, had to smile at this gentleman's sincere opinion. He might be shocked if he knew how much alcoholism is costing his organization a year. That company may harbor many actual or potential alcoholics. We believe that managers of large enterprises often have little idea how prevalent the problem is. Even if you feel your organization has no alcoholic problem, it might pay to take another look down the line. You may make some interesting discoveries. Of course, this chapter refers to alcoholics, sick people, deranged men. What our friend, the vice president, had in mind was the habitual, or back to the whoopee drinker. Still haven't figured out what that guy is. But I do know what a habitual or a what do they call it? A temperate drinker is. As to them, his policy is undoubtedly sound, but he did not distinguish between such people and the alcoholic because he doesn't understand the dilemma of the alcoholic with their mind. It is not to be expected that an alcoholic employee will receive a disproportionate amount of time and attention. He should not be made a favorite. The right kind of man, the kind who recovers, will not want this sort of thing. He will not impose. Far from it, he will work like the devil and thank you to his dying day. Today, I own a little company. There are 2 alcoholic employees who produce as much as 5 normal sales. Well, why not? They have a new attitude and they have been saved from a living death. I've enjoyed every moment spent in getting them straightened out. And I'm going to stop right there at the end of that chapter.